what I'd like to do is to treat this as a kind of practical thing, really. Because you can talk about sort of theories and it doesn't necessarily connect up terribly well when it comes to painting. So I've written at the top of my paper, in practice is how it starts. And the theme that Lawrence has unpacked for us is my theme, sort of getting ready for a day's painting today. So the theme is, actually, Lawrence, I was brought up on the Still Small Voice, which was the authorised version of it. And the Still Small Voice, this is my theme, and for me, it's got all this sort of background that Lawrence has already described here. So my studio's an old shed, and I've got the theme, the Still Small Voice. And the question is, what do you do next? Well, don't panic and have a cup of tea. It's probably the best start. My kind of usual routine actually is pretty much that. I normally I actually say my morning prayers, normally sitting in the old shed before I kick off. And the hard bit I find is to avoid an image to begin with. You know, you think of, there's Titian stuff and the Rubens stuff or whatever it is, then that kind of sticks in your mind on a particular theme. That's what you're doing, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. And the hard bit is to get rid of that to start off with, because what you've already got, in my opinion, my experience, is lethal for the possibilities of this painting process. Because you're remembering something and you're going to try and it was a bit that impressed you. You thought that was a really powerful painting, and so you can think that I can see how that can be an image of what I'm going to do. And so the first job is to find a way of staying with your sense of the theme. And the sense of the theme isn't really, isn't visual, and I find on the whole, it's not really words either, it's a feeling about something. And for me, the Still Small Voice is a very powerful one. When I heard the rumour that it was going to be this particular thing, I'd already had this thing for a couple of years before, waiting to be a painting. And so it was a feeling that I had about this. It's very. I find the story interesting, partly because of the epic Big Bang crash power stuff that's going on, and interestingly enough, the idea of security and proof and reliability, because Elijah, of course, had this, as you've already been told, this kind of contest. And I once saw a book that was called, I never read it, but it was called The God Who Answers by Fire. Sounding really impressive, just in opening. And the story is, at that stage, is the God who answers by fire. You can't really doubt what's going on because God, Yahweh, won hands down at this contest. And then it sort of proceeds along, and you end up with all the big sort of bang, crashing, and undoubtable stuff. The wind, the power of the wind, and the fire of the earthquake, all that stuff stops. And you're left with a voice that we can't even translate. We can't even translate what it it's something silent, something and nothing, but nothing and everything, all at the same time. And I feel when you're painting, you've got to get there somehow to where you've lost all the supports and all the preconceived ideas and the stuff that would make you feel you can rely on this to get you where you want to be at the end. It's all got to go, and the props have got to fall apart, for me, at any rate. And so, I've kind of gradually, I've tried it on Maureen and Peter, and so I try a lot of my ideas on them, and I kind of watch carefully to see what the expression is, interest, or what, or so. And one of the things that struck me on this, and has struck me for a long time over this, is that there is something unconvincing about what is undoubtable. And in the painting, when you've got something clear to start off with, you know where you're going. That's where not to go, because there is something in the end unconvincing about what is undoubtable. In my days painting objectively, I used to use a very, very long paintbrush to try and build in some of the doubt. The paintbrush has got longer and longer and longer. In the end, I ended up painting with a 2 metre, 20 centimetre long brush, which had a fair bit of doubt, but actually, in the end, there was something that wasn't sufficiently doubtable about that, because you kind of get the hang of it, even at that range, to some extent. And you need to go somewhere else. And with some encouragement from my good friends, in the end, I kind of made this shift, which I feel very sort of grateful for. So I've got down to the studio and sort of tried to dismiss all the props and ideas that I bring with me. And then the principle that I use then, I put a piece of canvas on. Actually, what I do is to put a piece of scrap canvas on. And there's something just a bit better about scrap canvas, because it doesn't sort of say, this is precious, this has got to be really good, Dom. It just sort of says, this is a bit of scrap canvas. So you feel a little bit more comfortable when I do with it. So I just staple that onto a board, so stretch it flat, but I staple it onto a board. So I feel slightly more comfortable at that point, and I begin to look for something, and I look for it with paint. What I do in practice is get some burnt umber, oil paint, get some burnt umber onto my little colour palette thing, and some Payne's grey. And so, as you know, the Payne's grey is cold, green, black, and the burnt umber is warm, brown stuff. And I use those as a cool and a warm, sort of to try ideas out, but not to try an image, but muck about, really. But the important thing is you're not just trying to have an accident on the canvas that might turn into something. Somewhere deep within you is this theme. And I kind of feel that that's really important. Well, I'm sure that's really important. But try not to ask me how it actually connects, because I'm not sure. So I have the theme, and then I start to look for it, and I look for it with paint. And that can happen quickly sometimes. Some of these are the oil sketches that are in here. That one there of The Dream of Jacob, the one there is actually still an oil sketch. That's waiting to be a big painting sometime. If there's a church that could do with a whopping great big one of those, I'd be delighted. So that started off with Payne's grey and burnt umber. And so along I went, and that one, I think some of the people in this room, I know certainly Father Chris and Moya and Peter saw that in its really, really early sort of phase. Others, it's a long old slog, and I do it and it goes nowhere, and I think, oh, I don't know about that, and just put it out of sight. And if I've done that, I can't continue in the process, because all I do is make the same mistakes again. And the mistakes for me are always doubt. They're not lack of skill, they're about doubt. And the preparedness to jump into the unknown with it, hoping that, I know I always catch myself hoping that the accident will produce the image that I really secretly have held on to. So anyway, that's sort of stage 2. Then stage 3, at the end of the day, it's not really the case, we're probably on to a month later really, but stage 3 is another very difficult stage, and that is just follow and don't try and help it along. Because I don't know whether if you've got any sort of kind of Bible-y background, there is a quotation from the New Testament from St. Paul's to the Galatians, who he's really cross with. And he starts off cross and carries on all the way through, really. And he says, "Oh, foolish Galatians, you started in the Spirit, and you're going to try and end in the flesh." And that is one of the best bits of art instruction that you can ever really have, in my opinion, because you start as an act of faith, as always a step behind what you're doing. You're looking and you're waiting and you're watching. But as it starts to develop, the temptation arrives. You know what this is. You know how that's going to go. You know what a person would look like when they're, as that seems to be emerging. Time to take over and make it do that. And this is the beginning of the ship sinking, because it starts to die on, for me, I can only remember, it starts to die on the canvas. And all the life is going out of it, it's becoming static, and it's becoming an embarrassment. I got to that with the Herod one, and I pointed that out in the opening night, so you were there. You'll forgive me for pointing it out again. It's just that it's I can remember the moment. I was going along with it, it was beginning to go static, and I knew why, and I knew that I had to have the courage to dispose of something. And so I got the rag, and I wiped the rag across the painting, which was just, which was here, in effect, and I did that, and that was where the arm came from. Because once I'd made that, once I'd made once I pulled the cloth across it, it wasn't with the intentions of turning it into something, it was the intention of losing something. And I lost it, but the whole process of losing was the key to the painting, as it turned out, because I could see that this was the arm that actually clinched the meaning of the painting for me. And so I kind of feel that this particular thing for the Mandorla, for me, picks up a whole stack of my experience of painting and the whole business, and even of kind of losing things. And you sort of think of Elijah at that poem, all the stuff that he really wanted, the power to rescue himself, to stamp his seal of being right, to defeat his opponents, is taken away, and he's left with this emptiness. this absence, this still small voice. And that's where kind of the life is for him. And that's, for me, as a painter, where the life is. Where you're not trying to be clever anymore, and you're losing stuff all over the place. And then you find what, for you, for me, at those moments, are precious and surprising and wonderful and alive. So, yeah, there you go.
Sorry?
Can we question?
Of course, yes.
So, Bob, I really appreciate that Bob seems to be describing this process and working. And for those that might be working in a more abstract process, I was thinking that another way to look at this too, I think what I appreciate what you're trying to point out is the ability to stay with a sense of intuition and spontaneity in the process. And that there's different ways that we can enter work, whether you're painting, you're doing textiles, printmaking, there's different ways you can start and enter. And for some, I know myself sometimes, I have to trick myself with something that's more intentional. So something that I pretend I do know where I'm going, and I do have a certain palette I set out, or maybe I set out 3 materials, and then I'm going to work with that. So I start with something pretty particular, so intentional. But I think as Bob was describing, that ability to flow with the process, to allow some of that spontaneity, and that entering into the unknown, that I think relates so well to the spiritual aspects, and looking at the theme is that whole element of the unknown, and the absence, as you said. How do you put line, form, and color to absence, or silence, or that unknown? So I think it's a very exciting theme for many different media and different ways that we're working. And I love this idea of having something that's solid that you sort of start or stand on. But some artists like to start much more intuitive. And then maybe things define themselves as they start, continue. And then you have something that solidifies. But there's many different ways of entering and starting the work. I really appreciate you describing that process.
Thanks, Audrey. Let's hear from our curator, Joy Legge, and then we'll open up to wider conversation, unless there's something absolutely burning at this moment. Is there? No? Okay, Joy.
Okay, well, I feel I've got the really boring part of it. I've got all the administration. I'm not going to be the artist, and I can't tell wonderful stories and all those kind of things. But what I can tell you is about the way that the Mandorla has developed over the time, how we've always put a lot of thought into the theme, as we've heard, and how we're trying to develop it in the most professional way for the artist, because we want to represent you in the very, very best ways. We've always concentrated on finding good exhibition spaces, and this we've got a space at Linton K in town, which is a really super space. They've got very good lighting. The works will be hung professionally. There's good space. We will be developing labels with all your text on it as far as your interpretation of your own artworks. And so we want to make the display and the way that you get your artwork to us as easy as possible for you all. So all the way along the line, if you have any queries or any questions at all, just come back and say, the terms and conditions are on our website. It's a very good website. Everything is there. It tells you the exact size of the paintings. Don't go that much over, because if you happen to win and someone measures it, you won't go to take all the prize. But really stick to what is there. All the conditions are there. We've mentioned before fabulous judges, and the ones for this year, we've got the 3 that are going to be doing the selection for the finalists. We've got Margaret Moore, and Margaret was a curator at the Art Award of Western Australia, and she consultant. She's been involved in the visual arts for many years, and now she's with the Festival of Perth on the visual arts side of the Festival of Perth. And the second one is Connie Petrillo, who herself is an artist and has been in the Mandorla Art Award and won, yes, and she's with a really super piece to it. And and at the moment she is developing the art collection for St John of God for display in hospitals. And they've got a new link, they call it the link gallery, which is a kind of very long corridor, and it's really being developed beautifully. I was out there just the other day, and their extensions are really working well for the art. And the third one is Ryan, what's Ryan's second? Ryan Green from here. And he is not here today. He would very much have liked to have been here to welcome you all. And it's very important for the art prize, yes, to have the people who have expertise in the visual arts, but it's also really important to have someone who interprets kind of all your paintings when they come in, to see if there's really sticking very much to this theme, which is something that is also kind of a must for the entries. So he will be the one that's coming in. There could be a very wonderful painting, but he will kind of talk to the other selected judges, selection judges, and see if they feel that the interpretation of the theme has been shown in the painting. So that's then. So then they all come into the Art Award up at Linton Kate, and then we have two judges at the moment. We're just waiting for a third to come in, and we have John McDonald, who is the arts editor for the Sydney Morning Herald, and has been involved with the visual arts across there, and is a very kind of informed and worldly person in the visual arts. And then we have Stephen Bevis from here, who is the West Australian editor for the visual arts. So they're both people who've been around to lots and lots of art exhibitions. We looked and listened and heard and been and Stephen Bevis himself has a degree in visual arts, so they're very arts oriented. And then there is the third person.
Yes, I've been asked, after a theologian, but we're also after a woman. So there aren't too many women who are theologians who are in art, the world as well. So tracking one of those has been interesting, but we're on the way.
It'll happen. So and then she will come in again with her expertise as far as the interpretation of the thing. So that's the way that it works. After it has been shown at the Linton Cave for gallery for nearly 10 days. It goes up to university. There's a selection of maybe 20 works that goes up to university and stays up there for 2 weeks. And at that time, the People's Choice announcement is, because we ask everybody that comes to the exhibition to give their choice and stuff like that. So that is announced at the university, and that's displayed at the university and Museum and Art Gallery there. So it's a really a long interpretation. We've been sending letters out to people asking you to start painting, be creative, put your thinking caps on, get going, and send us the information that we need. And then that closed on the 1st of June, and we asked you to have your paintings to us by the 1st of June, and we make the digital. Yes. So it's a process. It's a long process, and we just really look forward to seeing what happens, seeing what comes, what evolves out of this all, and that's the great part. It's the great part. Very exciting.